What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd It Out. One Piece is out, 11/24, titled Best Friend. We going to talk about the chapter. We got some other news as well. So we didn't do too much coverage on the One Piece Day information, but Wit has dropped a lot of promotional material about the remake. So they have like a lot of like concept art, designs, things like that. If you didn't see the One Piece Day stream, basically they talk through the early stages of getting the production going, and they're really like going in on it. They were showing the marine base for Axan Morgan. They have that entire like island mapped out. Like, I mean, the complete design of the island they have like in a 3D render, and basically what they're doing is they're trying to breathe life into some areas that aren't necessarily looked at or like really discussed. Because when we were dealing with Axan Morgan and stuff, you know, we had the tavern and then we had the marine base, and it was kind of like a back and forth between those two areas. I think their goal with that area, and even with like Fuchsia Village, Serb Village, probably they're going to try and expand on the locations, the environment. They want to make it feel more lively. We also got some info on the Netflix adaptation. So season 2, we got some new castings, and the one that stuck out to me the most was Katie Seagal. If you don't know who that is, she's the voice of Leela in Futurama, and she's Peggy Bundy in Married with Children. She's Kate in 8 Simple Rules. Like she's a pretty well-renowned actress. I know her mainly from her voice. She has a very distinct voice. Like if you've heard Layla before in Futurama, you know what her voice sounds like. She's going to be Dr. Kureha, and I think that's actually a really good casting. I know a lot of people were thinking about Jamie Lee Curtis. I know she wanted to do it, but I think the timing of like recording and things like that just didn't line up. So she ended up not doing it. I think they did reach out to her and try to get her at some point, but they went with Katie Seagal, and I think that's going to be a good combination. Even look-wise, I think they still stuck the landing with the look. I think it won't take a whole lot to make her look like Dr. Kureha. So I really like that casting. But they casted Hiralook, they casted Cobra. So they're going through the casting. I think they're still supposed to be announcing some stuff for the rest of the casting. I don't know that we have Robin or Chopper yet. I think that's what we're waiting on. So we'll see if those come out in the near days, unless they have come out and I just missed it. We also kind of got some details on how deep the live action is going to go as far as season 2. So it's going to cover Logtown, Reverse Mountain, Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island. So it's stopping right before we get to Alabasta. Now that may be the reason why we don't have the casting for Robin yet, because we're not necessarily going to get there. I would imagine the ending of season 2 is going to tease Robin and Crocodile. Like I feel like that has to be kind of like a draw in for season 3, is that okay, now you've introduced these 2 new characters, and like obviously the people who know One Piece know Crocodile is not gonna be hyped for that, but I think if you can nail the Crocodile aesthetic, like just make him creepy and mysterious, I think you can draw in people for season 3 easily. And even reading, so they did announce, they did like a little a display or like an image that kind of just has a written up text on it, and they did mention that they were still kind of teasing the casting for Robin and Chopper. Like I think it says, among those yet to be announced, what about Vivi, Miss All Sunday, what are they doing with Chopper? Can't announce everyone at once, but starting tomorrow we'll be announcing more cast members over 3 days. That's the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. So we might even hear about it by the time this episode releases, because I'm recording this on the 22nd. That's when the chapter dropped, so we might get some more info on the 23rd. And in non-One Piece manga news, JJK is ending in 5 chapters. Gage came out and said, you know what, series is ending, we wrapping it up. And the fandom has been in shambles, especially on the heels of My Hero's ending and how that was received. And the amount of stuff that is kind of coming out for JJK is just like, there's so much that hasn't been touched on in JJK, and now we're just about to end it. And to me, I think that's fairly normal because, I mean, that's what JJK is. JJK has never been a story-driven manga, at least not in my opinion. It's been action, it's been fights, it's been technique. That's the draw of JJK is, everyone's curse technique, how they fight, how they implement it, the different minutia of how those fights can be played out. That's where JJK shines. The story is there, I guess. I mean, if it is even there. Like, think about it. The setting was Jujutsu High. We were there for like 20 minutes. Never went back. Never going back. And then we're like, it's kind of based on Tokyo, so it's not like fictional areas. It's just real areas, so like Shibuya, Tokyo. That's kind of what we're looking at. But even in that case, there's no real draw to the location. Like, you could have been like, oh, we're fighting in Texas. It wouldn't have changed anything. Like, the location is so uneventful and unimportant, it literally doesn't matter. Like, the world outside of the fights and the main characters is a nothing burger. Yeah, you want to know more about Inamaki? Because, I mean, I do. Never gonna get it. But it is what it is. Like, I haven't been too excited for the next coming chapters of JJK. But I won't go too much into it because, we don't like to spoil the territory. But yeah, it's ending in 5 chapters. We will definitely be talking about it once the last few come out. I might add it to the rotation, just because I want to see how it goes out. But that was the news, and usually a long intro, but I wanted to do the news first because we're going to be talking about the chapter, obviously. And I might do a little seasonal stuff, but I just wanted the news to come first, just because we weren't going to get into spoilers and all that stuff. But as always, a word from our sponsors. Thank you for tuning in to Blerd Out. Whether you're listening from YouTube on my channels like Darren King Kuma or Blerd Out Podcast, or one of the many podcast sites like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more, I appreciate your support. If you want to listen to older episodes of that podcast, head on over to Patreon. If you join as a free member, you can watch all the old episodes from the old seasons for free. Plus, there'll be other content that didn't quite make it to an episode or on a YouTube video that you can check out there as well. Your support means the world. And if you haven't caught up to the latest chapters or episodes, please note there will be spoilers ahead.
Oops. Spoilers.
Okay, 1124, Best Friend. The cover story has Yamato saving someone from being kidnapped on the way to Curry. Now, the person who is doing the kidnapping, I believe, is a silhouette off to the right-hand side here. So we really can't make out what they look like. I think that's going to come into play at some point. I don't see a reason why they would be silhouetted unless Oda was specifically trying to keep their identity a secret to bring back into some plot point. So this is going somewhere, and I can't really make a whole lot out based on the design. It's kind of hard to tell because it just looks like someone's running away. The only really interesting thing I see is like the foot of the character. Like, it's very sharp and stick like it doesn't look like it has like toes or anything. It looks almost like an animal's foot. So that would lead me to believe that it might be like a gifter, like a leftover gifter from Kaido's crew, someone who has like just like a chicken fruit or something. Is it Fortrix, who is the chicken? Maybe it's him. But like the rest of the body doesn't have like very distinctive look to it. So, it's just really hard to tell. But I think that is going to come back later as a plot point. Into the chapter itself, we start with Big News Morgans. And he's basically just talking about all the stories he's going to spread. They plan on kind of embellishing a bit on the world ending, where it's like, Vegapunk didn't say that the world was necessarily ending. It was just that that's the direction we're headed. And even Vivi says that, you guys are kind of embellishing this a little bit. Even Vegapunk was like, there's a chance we can turn this around. It doesn't have to end. But Morgan's is dead set on like, nah, the world's ending. Everyone panic. And he even talks about how because he's in the sky, you know, he's already got the market on survivability. He's like, we flying good. And the funny thing about that is, as far as I recall, he is a flightless bird. So as far as his devil fruit goes, it does not give him flight. Meaning that although his ship can fly, if something were to happen to the ship, he's out of luck. But there's a lot of back and forth between Morgans and Vivi. Vivi is standing firm on what she believes, as I would expect. And Wapol here is just trying to appease Morgans, because basically this is his only safe spot right now. I think Morgans is going to utilize this a little bit more. At some point, it's going to bite him in the butt. Namely with Vivi. I think Wapol is kind of like he's just a side piece here, just to remind us that he was there at some point. I don't think he's going to play as big a role for now. What I would like to see is if someone comes in here for Vivi. If someone, basically if intel leaks, because that's one of the things that Wapol was talking about, was that this was the only safe haven. I wonder if information might leak that Vivi is here and that they might come hunting for Morgans. Because there were some flags that were like, we're safe up here, you know, I've already got the market on the air, they can't touch us. It feels very much like he's about to get touched. So we'll see how that goes for Morgans. Cut to Egghead, and it's looking rough. Like the lower level of Egghead is all on fire, courtesy of the Buster Call. The dome looks relatively untouched. And in last chapter, they talked about creating artificial clouds and keeping the technology safe, and that's what's keeping the upper like lab here fine, like where Punk Records is. It's on one of the floating artificial clouds, so it's really not affected by all the fire and torching going on down below. But I thought about it after I talked about it on the cast, of why the importance of the artificial clouds were being like hinted at. And I completely like skipped over the idea that if the world's sinking, having an artificial land base in the sky would be the next best thing. So like, of course they're going to keep that technology under wraps, because they would be the ones that control the new land should all the old land sink in the water. Just something that I thought about, like it was very shortly after I had recorded, and I was like, oh, duh. The world's sinking. Of course they would use cloud technology. Like, of course that's super important. But we actually see a small little panel, or not a small panel, a small little snippet of Sentimaru here escaping. He's paddling away, he's got his axe, and he's got like some provisions, and he's pretty broken up. I think essentially what's happening here is this is his resignation from the world government. He's gonna be a wanderer at this point. I honestly wonder if he'll get picked up. It would be really cool if he gets picked up by Sword, like if he ends up like deep within the Sword organization. But for the most part, he's pretty much just paddling away. Now I wonder if there's any sea beasts that are still like sea kings, like that Vegapunk experimented with. I wonder if there's still any of those out here guarding the island. I know some of them got packed up, some of them got tamed. I don't know if they wiped them all out, but that could possibly be an issue if he runs into them on the way out of here. But you see, he's been affected by basically everything that's going on. Vegapunk was obviously one of his friends, as we saw in the Kuma flashback, so this is a lot for him to take in. He's kind of just taking it in stride and paddling away. And then we get a really interesting dialogue between Kizaru and Akainu. And it starts with Akainu basically wondering what happened, because he hasn't been able to reach. Kizaru picked up, of all people, where it's like you would expect the strongest or one of the strongest people to be, you know, in the fight, or you don't want them to be the one doing basic transpondence. So he's like, why are you answering the snail? Where's everyone else at? And I think this is an indicator, because he talks about how everyone's basically laid out. He is fine. So I'm wondering if this is a hockey feat for Kizaru, where it's like, okay, it knocked out everyone up to Vice Admiral. The Admirals were fine. Now, because I don't think we really saw him be affected by it, it's hard to say, especially considering he was already like just laid out on a ship. So there's no telling if he was affected, got up early, if he wasn't affected at all. I think either way, it shows that he was less affected than everyone else. So at the very most, he was affected, but not by much. Very least, you know, he wasn't affected at all. Either way, I think it's in good favor for admirals. He basically says he'll let them explain once they wake up, because he's not about to go through the whole thing. And this is where we get to the interesting part of the dialogue, because Akainu immediately goes like, okay, you slacking off. Clearly you're not working hard because you're sitting here answering the phone. You don't feel like giving me a message. Like you're just out there not doing anything. And then Kizaru talks about, have you ever had to kill your best friend? And Kane's quiet. And we get some flashback of Kizaru and Vegapunk interacting. And it's funny because I think Kizaru is there to arrest Vegapunk. Vegapunk's like, you're not gonna arrest me. You guys want my knowledge and you want my expertise, so you're here for me but not to arrest me, so how much you gonna pay me? And I think that's it goes to show that Vegapunk in a way is street smart, where he's like he's not susceptible or just naive to how the world works. He still knows pretty well how the world works, so he's like, yeah, I know what you're here for. How much is it gonna be? And they named the price he liked. And it kind of just shows the setup of Egghead. Kizaru, Shosentamaru both helping basically with the creation of Egghead, because it's like he's just doing like manual work. And I really love it because you see Kizaru there, you see Sentamaru there, and you see Kuma there. And they're all working together. So it's kind of reinforcing that camaraderie that they had. Because the initial reveal that Kizaru was more in line with Kuma and Sentamaru and Vegapunk, like he wasn't just there, he was a friend to them. He was with them at some of the major points of their life, considering once Egghead started, you know, all of Kuma's modifications with Bonnie, they danced together like Nika. Like these were friends to him. And it's like Sentamaru got messed up, Vegapunk got killed, Kuma's effectively dead. These were all his friends, and he had to kind of carry out this mission in which they would all end up dead. And now they are, and he's kind of like, you have the gall, the gumption, the nerve to say that I'm slacking off when you're sitting at your desk doing nothing. I've been here killing all my best friends. You're sitting at your desk, and you're gonna tell me I'm the one slacking off. And it's so weird because One Piece is, you know, 1,100 chapters in. Kizaru is one of the last people I would think we'd get an emotional panel from. But we get one where he's like, we see tears, we see like his nose is running, but it's not a typical panel of like when a character in One Piece cries. It's very much, he's more angry and frustrated than he is sad. Like, and I think that's accentuated when you see the veins in his face and like in his neck. So it's like it's not just sadness, he's mad. Like he's legit angry at Akainu for what he said. So much so to the point where Akainu apologizes. Like, of all things, Akainu apologized. And this is a very similar outburst to how Fujitora talked to Akainu. But I think because of what Fujitora did, it kind of comes off different. And we know that Kizaru and Akainu have been serving for a while now, serving together for a while now. So they probably have more of a bond than Akainu and Fujitora ever did, or ever will for that matter. So I can see the level of respect. This even goes to how I think Akainu and Aokiji ended, where Akainu didn't just straight up kill Aokiji. It was, once Aokiji lost, it was kind of like, all right, I'm not gonna kill you. So there's camaraderie here. They aren't just working together. They clearly have, some type of friendship, even if it's not as nuanced or explored as some of the other ones we see. It still exists. And it's honestly good to see this side of both the characters. I think it makes the admirals a bit more three-dimensional. Definitely Kizaru. We had been talking about how Kizaru was mentally nerfed and how this was affecting him. It's good to see us reach a point where we're talking about it, because I think that's what we needed. I was mentioning probably, I think it's the good, the bad, the egghead video. Kizaru mentally nerfed is understandable, but if we don't talk about it, if we don't dive into it, it's pointless. If we don't get any kind of indication from him himself, it's pointless. So the fact that we got here, this is what we needed. This makes the Kizaru stuff look a lot better. And this was a short chapter, by the way, because we're already on the third segment, and this is the wrap up segment of the chapter here. We are with the ELBAF ship and Thousand Sunny, and we actually get some insight on how Luffy feels about what happened here. And I like it because a lot of people were going on and on about how, because Luffy is in Gear 5, he doesn't take anything seriously. And one of the things they specifically mentioned was that he didn't care that Vegapunk got killed. But even here, we get direct confirmation that Luffy is taking it hard, because he promised he would take Vegapunk away from Egghead, and essentially he feels like he failed. He let Vegapunk die. And he's not brooding, he's not sitting by himself being sad and depressed. The way they indicate that he's feeling off is that he's not eating as much as he normally does. And I think that's fine. I don't think it has to be this big display of him being upset. I think him just doing something that's uncharacteristic, which is eating less, is perfectly fine to show that, okay, he's acting out of character. And I think that's enough to pinpoint how much this is affecting him. And this is Frankie talking with Jinbei and Zoro. I like this dynamic. I need this dynamic more often. I don't know what it is specifically about these three, but I like it. We hop over to the ELBAF ship, and we have Lilith wake up. And this is where some of the other crew, so we get some of the crew on the Sunny, some of the crew on the ELBAF ship. So we got Chopper, Usopp, Nami, Sanji. They were all looking after Lilith. So I think the only people on the Thousand Sunny are Zoro, Jinbei, and Frankie. So I think even Robin is on the Viking ship. Well, Lilith wakes up, kind of takes bearing of where she is, and she starts going through all of the, I guess you could say, emotions. Essentially, when you think about how the Vegapunks were separated and what the separation was intended for, which was, certain tasks to be handled by each Vegapunk, and it didn't have to fall in the main Stella body. So, hunger, that was taken care of by one of the Vegapunks. Sadness, everything, every emotion, every action, it was carried out by a certain Vegapunk to make things more efficient. When Lilith wakes up, it seems like she basically runs through all the emotions that would normally be spread out amongst the other Vegapunks. And this kind of comes to a head when Vegapunk talks about, or Lilith talks about, how everyone's still alive, even if they're functionally dead. So what I'm imagining what happens is basically the effect of these satellites is nailed down to Lilith now. And I wonder what this means, because we don't get verification on what happens to York. But the fact that Lilith goes through all the interpretations of the emotions and says everyone's functionally dead, it kind of makes me think that they might have killed York off. Because realistically, they might not have a reason to keep York around, considering how everything went. Now, the other explanation, which they actually do mention in the chapter, is that Lilith just isn't connected to York anymore. So it's like maybe it's just because she's not connected that kind of carried over to Lilith. Now, what I think that also indicates is that York should be the same way. If York is still alive, the same thing should be happening to York. And the reason that's important is because York was greed. York, was the greedy glutton. And the quest for power came from that personification of greed. If York is now basically a single-minded Vegapunk, whereas greed isn't the leading or single emotion that drives York, does York still want to work with the Gorosei? Does York act differently now that everything's been separated? That's what I want to see. That's what I'm curious about. Because basically what's happening is they have 2 remaining Vegapunks. And they would be technically whole, right? Because they're the embodiment of Vegapunk and mind, at least when it comes to like emotion, when it comes to all the things you try to separate, they should be back together now. But all that to say that basically they technically accomplished their goal of getting Vegapunk off the island. Now, it's not the Vegapunk that made the request, it's not the Stella body, it's a form of Vegapunk. And I really want to see more into how this works. I want more of like a description on personality. Is this Vegapunk more Lilith or is this Vegapunk more Vegapunk? That's going to be the interesting part. I think as far as a character, I would like it to be more like Lilith. Like, if Wrath kind of has a leading role as far as like the monotony of how Vegapunk works or Lilith works, I think that would be interesting. I would like that as far as a crew dynamic. I think we're going to explore that over time. I don't think Lilith is going to leave us immediately. If she doesn't join the crew, I think she's going to be a tag along for a little bit. I sincerely hope, at least. But hearing this news gets everybody excited. So naturally, the party is back on and we celebrate. We're doing the end of the arc celebration. We're moving on. We're heading to ELBAF. Everyone's here. Like, they all get on the Viking ship and then everyone celebrates. They all have their drinks and they're all vibing, having a good time. And the last panel, that last panel is of ELBAF. We get a shot of ELBAF and then we get a shot of someone saying, "Come on then." And I'm pretty sure that's Shanks. Like, I think the idea is that Shanks is waiting on ELBAF. Now, here's the thing. Shanks logically can't be here when Luffy gets here. If Shanks is there when Luffy's there, then you gotta do the whole thing with the Straw Hat, the whole thing where they really aren't supposed to meet until they're able to fight and then go at each other. I think narratively it doesn't make sense for it to be Shanks. Other indications would be the man with the burn scar, or the man covered scorched by flames. That might be the person who's sitting here. I think that has a varying option as well. I don't know. This is interesting. But the fact that they're drinking, like, drinking is a very Shanks thing, but it also makes me think of Rayleigh. Because like it looks like the bottle they have is like a flask. And Rayleigh was always drinking out of a flask. However, back to the Shanks theory, it looks like this person has like a collar. And Shanks's grip, he has that collar. So like it's seeming a lot like Shanks. If they're sitting on ELBAF, it wouldn't make sense that Shanks there right now. I don't think he's gonna be there when they get there. Something has to happen to stop that from going down. But that is the chapter. We are on break next week, so we're leaving off with this cliffhanger. Once we come back, we're gonna be I think honestly hitting that final stretch, because I mean we got what? ELBAF, and we have what I would imagine to be Raft Hill after that. Like we go to ELBAF, we get that last road poneglyph, or we essentially get the last poneglyph we need, and then we're on our way. Like that's the timeline we should be working on. So I mean, we are definitely in the final stretch. Honestly, it's weird, and in the light of like all these other manga ending, One Piece's ending it's on the horizon. Like it's on the way. I mean, we still got some time. We still probably got like 3-4 years of One Piece, but that ending's around the corner. It's gonna be a sad time. But that was a chapter. Good chapter. Good way to close it out. I want to see what the theories are on who that person is at the bottom. I'm sure that there's gonna be tons of people, deep diving into every intricate part of the drawing to see who's what. I want to see how that goes. Let me know what you thought. Like, comment, subscribe, smash the like button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.